Welcome to All Things in the Name of Love. If you like this show, please like, subscribe, and share. Thanks. Welcome to another episode of All Things in the Name of Love. And today I have with me, we talked a few minutes beforehand, so we're soul sisters, Anita Kuzma, who's the CEO and founder of the Ardenalia, did I say it right?
Ardelian Kuzma group.
Okay, group. And her passion is to helping others get unstuck, awaken their potentials and purpose, and dream big and take aligned action so they can start acting with the width of their lives. And I love that. She is a well-being coach and consultant. She works with high-achieving professionals and entrepreneurs to overcome burnout, which is huge, redefine success, and create sustainable routines to achieve optimal health and create lives of purpose, passion, and peace. After a successful 25 years in the corporate world, I'm so proud of you because I did not last that long. You found herself burned out and dissatisfied. So she embarked on her own self-discovery journey and then found coaching and consulting business to help others live the width, not just the length of their lives. In addition to having her MBA from the Weatherhead School of Management, Anita is a certified health coach, life and executive coach, certified ACC coach with the International Coaching Federation, yoga and meditation teacher, breathwork facilitator, host of transformational retreats, and the host of the Live the Width of Your Life podcast. Oh my goodness, honey, this is why I'm so excited to talk to you. Thank you so much for joining me.
Oh my gosh, thank you, Sophia. It's always strange hearing someone read your bio, because those are, as we know, just things that we do. They're not who we are.
Right.
So I'm super excited to have this conversation with you.
Me too. So tell me about your spiritual journey. Like, I know I was joking before because I was in the corporate world, I was in the academic world, didn't fit in, and I kept trying to fit in, and then I couldn't. So tell me
Yeah.
about your journey.
Yeah, me too. I think that that's such a common theme, isn't it? Like we just try to contort ourselves into places that really aren't where we're supposed to be. It's interesting. I would say my spiritual journey started very young. I had grandparents who were very, very religious, very faithful and religious, and so grew up kind of hearing scripture and seeing them very much in the Word. And then when I got older, I discovered yoga. And for me, in my 20s, yoga was definitely a place where I was rediscovering what it meant to be a spiritual being and sort of bringing and aligning myself, mind, body, spirit, breath all together. And the journey continued with yoga. And then I started to explore meditation, and that really was also very helpful. And it was when I started my yoga teacher training, very much in my 40s, even though I'd been practicing at that point for over 20 years. In my 40s, I thought, you know what, I want to go deeper and I want to get certified in yoga, but I didn't know why. But it really was to go deeper into the philosophy and to understand the 8 limbs of yoga, of course, which is beyond just the asana, the postures, and then since then, I think that it's just opened up a world of possibilities for me in terms of understanding different scripture from various different um, philosophies and histories and areas, and then just continuing to explore on my own journey and path. And so for me, I find my spirituality and this journey just to be one that continues on forever. And I would say the biggest transformation has been for me one from being intellectually thinking about spirituality to one that's much more experiential and heart centered.
Mm, I love that. I love that because I get that very well.
Yeah.
Like I love intellectualizing things.
Yeah.
And for me, my journey has been like a combination of spirituality and trying to understand quantum physics,
Mhm.
because it helps the left brain part of me to actually quantify what I know in here. But I've been in academia on and off for so long, like I had to do that. It's like, okay, let's play with frequency, let's play with quantum physics. And it just solidifies everything that I already know.
Yeah. It's interesting because once you start, I love to read and I love to listen to podcasts and I'm obsessed with Gaia. And so I just am always seeking more. And so I do love learning more about quantum physics and energy and frequency. And the more you learn, the more curious I find myself. And the more I find myself like a new book drops in my lap or a new podcast is something that I discover. And that's why I feel like the journey never ends. There's so much to learn and to experience, and yet in some ways I still feel like this earthly body is only capable of understanding so much. So I love to say that I know nothing and I'm still learning and I'm still on the journey.
When I was little, I had this awareness that like I at the time, because I didn't know this, I am never going to be able to use all of the gifts I have.
Mm.
Because in my perception, I mean, I thought 50 was ancient. Like an 8-year-old, I'm like, I'm never going to use all of them. But what I find is that I don't have to use them all at the same time.
Mm.
And so like baking, for example, I've been doing since I was 4 because I came from a previous lifetime. Like I just know it
Oh,
because I know it way too well. I'm remembering Chinese meridians by relearning them because I'm so excited about it
mm.
that there's no explanation for it. I've never had a class that I've been this excited about in my entire
Yeah.
life. So it speaks to me like, oh, I'm just remembering this. So like when we're learning stuff, it feels more like a remembrance
Yeah.
of what we forgot.
Mhm.
But it's fun to rediscover it.
Oh, yeah. The remembering is so beautiful, isn't it? Because there is an inner knowing, there's a nudge, there might be a quiet voice, there might be some synchronicities if you're paying attention that you notice. And you're right, some things feel like a remembering because they feel familiar, even
Mhm.
though you don't know why.
Right. Oh,
Yeah.
it's fascinating. And just as an example, you and I, like, you turned on the camera and I'm like, yep, I know you.
I know.
Not from this lifetime, not from this lifetime yet,
Yeah.
but I have the soul remembrance through the heart connection.
Hmm.
And I'm finding that as we're going through this fascinating time in consciousness, the ability to connect with those in the heart resonance is becoming not only more critical, but easier to find.
Absolutely. It's interesting because I just find that the people that I'm gravitating towards and others that are gravitating towards me are all in the similar space.
Mhm.
And even like you and I, it's just so interesting, right? Because are you still on the East Coast?
Nope, I'm in Oregon.
You're in Oregon, that's right. You said you moved to Oregon. I'm in Cleveland, Ohio.
Okay.
And so shows like this give us an opportunity where we might never have met during this lifetime otherwise, right?
Right.
But we have an opportunity to connect in a deep way. And like you said, to go, huh, there's something really interesting here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it's just that state of, because I can feel the frequencies of other people. And that's just the language I use. Like, you can feel if somebody's in a good vibe, if it's a bad vibe. And I don't even consciously notice it, but I don't want to spend time with people as much that are in a different frequency than me.
Yeah.
And it's not saying that they're separate from me. It just, I want to be around people who bring me joy, who help me remember that higher level of frequency. Because I think the more we focus on it, the more we bring it into our world.
I agree. I agree. And I think that when you said that you were in academia and it was really hard because you didn't feel like you fit in, I felt the same way in banking too. And I do think that it's interesting to consider thinking about energy and frequency of organizations and what this new frontier of leadership could be in terms of energetic leadership,
Right.
because it's not necessarily the way most organizations operate. And
Mm.
yet, so many people are finding that they feel like they need to leave in order to survive.
It's fascinating that you say that because like what I've been tuning into is how do I lead myself? Like I don't have to be a leader of others,
Yeah.
but how do I show up as the highest, most self-honoring, humble, amazing version of myself.
Mhm.
And I don't have to do anything. I just have to show up as that. And that's the leadership.
Yeah. It's true, and it all comes from a place of love, doesn't it? Like,
Mhm,
I always go back to, like, the most simple form is love,
mhm,
which, breeds more gratitude, more joy, more peace, more
mhm.
hope, more gentleness.
Yeah.
It's all these fruits of the spirit that we probably have heard, and,
Mhm.
even as children, and ways to treat one another.
Yeah.
And I do find that when we're able to operate in that place, all good things then tend to follow. And instead, if it comes from a place of fear and you have some of these negative emotions and negative frequencies, nothing good tends to follow. And that's why it's so hard to turn the news on. It's so hard sometimes to just look through a feed, because the curated information is really not there
Yeah.
to operate at the highest frequencies. It's ones to create the lower ones. And then that doesn't feel good. It's
No,
really,
it
really
doesn't.
hard.
It does
Mhm.
not. And like finding like what I find, because I'm not paying attention at all. I haven't voted in a few years because I don't like the separation.
Yeah.
And so I don't get, I had a friend a few months ago obliquely get me into a political conversation. I'm like, I put the boundary up. I'm not talking politics because it's all about separation. She's like, yeah, but and I'm like, yeah, and that's separation. Where are you
Okay.
finding that candidate triggering you? Because that
Right.
candidate is doing nothing to you.
Mhm.
You have that trigger within you,
Mhm.
and you get to be present with it and feel it. Because
Yeah.
it's a wounded part of you that you didn't know you had until that candidate spoke and you go, "Ah."
Yeah. Oh, that's such a great point too, because it is all about division and separation, and that never feels good. Doesn't lead to anything really good. Yeah.
No, this is not. So how are you like bringing this deep wisdom into like a more mainstream mindset? Because I know that's a gap
Yeah.
that gets to
It's
be
true.
bridged.
Yeah, and so when I coach folks, I think people who find me, who seek me as a coach, are seekers in their own way. They tend to probably be on some sort of a spiritual journey themselves, whether they have the words for that or yet not, but they definitely are open to spirituality. Because if you're coming to me for coaching, and I also do yoga and meditation and breath work and mindfulness, you tend to be comfortable with some of that more mainstream language.
Yeah.
I also tend, when I work with organizations and companies, I bring in a lot of science. So we talk a lot about the science, neuroscience, and we talk about our nervous system and what that and how breath work impacts that, and meditation. And I find that when we are able to bring in data and science and information, and then couple it with, and here's something you can do about it in the
Yeah.
form of a modality or a practice,
Mhm.
it's suddenly people they don't see it as woo woo or something that is uncomfortable or
Mhm.
so different, but it suddenly becomes a tool that they can use to deal with something that is very real in their life. And then they have language that feels appropriate for them. And so that's the way I try to bridge it. And I do think that I do have a role as a bridge. Having one foot, I feel, always like in the spiritual world and also in the secular world, and maybe even
Yeah.
in the business field, working with executives, working with entrepreneurs.
Mhm.
I do work sometimes with other light workers and spiritual entrepreneurs, but then it's very different. Then it's
Right.
spending a little bit more time in the masculine energy, because
Mhm.
sometimes people are very comfortable in their feminine there, but they don't necessarily have the masculine energy to take action and to move
Right.
forward. But it really is combining that feminine and masculine energy,
Mhm.
and in a way that that doesn't make people feel uncomfortable, but in a way that they understand it and they're able to embrace it then for their own personal growth.
Mhm. I love that. And you brought up an awareness that I had Sunday. Um, So I was doing this beautiful journaling exercise, and when I journal stuff like that that has prompts, my subconscious immediately jumps out and shows me things. So what I saw, and this is a fascinating thing that I'm still diving into, the difference between feminine and feminism.
Mm,
And for me, that um, having been in the corporate world, like 91, 92, there was that need to try to fit in as a masculine feminine. So
mm,
it's like a distorted masculine energy where
mm,
there's like a combination of sexualization and manipulation and repressing one's feelings um, in subtle ways that are like condoned in society because we're going into a patriarchal society, into a corporate world which is masculine based.
right.
So to um, repress the feminine energy to fit in.
Mhm.
I didn't even know that that was like a major operating system in myself until Sunday. And I was like, wow, this is so interesting because that's like a different level of masculine and feminine energy. And because the feminism is like, let's repress the feminist or the feminine energy
Mm,
and just be masculine, but still try to be feminine. And so I want to dive into that
mm.
interesting convoluted space.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I never thought about it that way. For I was a women's studies minor in college too, and I went to a very conservative college, like, and so being a women's studies minor was kind of interesting anyway.
Yeah.
And but it there we definitely I could see how it could be a distorted masculine take on what it means to be a woman and
Mhm.
what kind of woman one needs to be. And then in the corporate space, I felt like I was repressing things that were feminine about me as well. um, and especially feminine energy, which is more about flow and a little bit more time to think and rest. It was definitely more of the distorted, let's go, we've got things to do, hustle, achieve,
Mhm.
go faster, go harder, hit the deadlines, all those things.
Yeah.
um, but I've never thought about the difference between feminine energy and feminism, and maybe the definition or the way it was in the 90s when you and I were growing up, it sounds like, versus the way it is now. Do you think that people still who identify as feminists are in the distorted masculine, or do you think that's shifted a little bit and people are more in their healthy feminine?
That's a good question. I'm not really sure because it depends on the generation.
Yeah,
Like my mom's generation, I mean, she didn't go to any marches or anything like that, but she worked.
yeah,
Um, and it was her own work. She was an organist and a piano teacher, so she had her own, she carved out her own space, but she grew up with a single mom in the 40s. So she had that masculine energy coming through her line.
yeah.
And so she didn't know how to be a woman
Mm,
because she didn't have anyone to teach her because my grandma was working in a dry cleaning factory as a seamstress
yeah,
to feed the kids. So she never had that feminist or that feminine energy. So I
right.
saw this tough woman that had control issues, and it manifested itself because she was very feminine. She's a musician. Like that's
Yeah.
super creative, like super powerful creativity. It was this constant internal battle of which one she was going to be, and she couldn't ever really accept the both. So she went
Yeah.
to either controlling or undiagnosed bipolarism or manic depression or just hiding and reading books for days.
Mm. That's interesting. I wonder if the times and the location, like the setting, also impacts what you're able to do. Because
Yeah.
when you are in survival mode and you need
Mhm.
to work hard and feed the kids, um, you're definitely going to be in the very heavy masculine
Right.
energy, and it could
Right.
be the distorted masculine. Um, so yeah, there's probably, I guess, a level of privilege to being able to naturally allow yourself to flow between the two in a healthy way.
Yeah. Oh, there definitely is. And I think like as the generations have progressed, that what I've seen is really interesting. I remember like I was in college starting in 1987 and I wanted to lift weights because I love having a healthy back. And one of my college coaches said, "Yeah, I'll just let you have access to the weight room. I'll be in another room. I'll hear you if anything happens. We're fine." And then the football coach came in one day and saw me lifting. He's like, "What are you doing here?" I said, "I'm just lifting weights." He's like, "Well, no, you can't," because I was a woman.
Mm,
And so I had that, but I want to do what I want to do. And I see younger women, now that I've been to a gym in a few years, but a couple, younger women just doing whatever because
yeah.
they benefited from the generational gap between me and them, where
Yeah.
they feel empowered to just do whatever they want to do and be as strong and healthy as they want. But I'm still not, let's say, I'm still like, I think the definitions of feminism have changed
Mhm.
and feminine, because I think the feminist energy that I grew up with was more abrasive and in your face
Mhm.
and aggressive. And now it feels more like I am, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And there was a level of fighting, right? There was a level of fighting for rights that didn't exist.
Right.
And I wonder if we're going to start to see a shift again, because I have young daughters in their 20s, and I think they were shocked when I told them that there was a pay discrepancy between men and women, because in their minds, they just couldn't understand that, like, how could that be?
Right.
And that, of course, is privilege also, because, they were younger, they weren't in the workforce yet, they didn't know necessarily, they knew it was wrong, it didn't seem right, and they, in their mind, are like, "But how could this be? We live in the United States of America. Like, what is it like in other countries?"
Right.
And I'm like, "Surprisingly, it's better actually in other places, there are actually laws against this." So,
Mhm.
it's interesting. I do think that there's differences in the generations, and just depending on what was happening.
Yeah. I definitely
Mm.
feel that. And are you seeing that with your in the people that you work with? Are you feeling shifts in awareness that are happening?
Yeah, I see the shift that many women, especially those that are in burnout, people
Mhm.
that are burned out, men and women, it's because they've been in the distorted masculine for too long, and they haven't aligned their choices with their values. They haven't aligned their daily choices with what feels good, that keeps them healthy, that is nurturing. They are just on this hamster wheel. And so I think that when suddenly people have language and we talk about some of these things, suddenly there's an opportunity and a shift to choose differently.
Mhm.
But for too many, I think, and I was one of them, I just didn't see a way out. I didn't see that there was another option or another choice. What do you mean? I can't possibly stop doing everything that I'm doing and working this hard and working on the weekends and, logging back on at work at night and all of these things. And I think people are saying, well, that's not working for me. That's
Right.
not bringing me joy. That's making me sick. That's
Mhm.
causing challenges with my family. That's, making me feel exhausted. And
Mhm.
so I think that they are suddenly open to, okay, this isn't working. What else could I do?
Mhm. No, I love that because like it's a fascinating space to have that wall. I'll say when my dad died in 2009, I tried to work the following year in an engineering firm that I'd been with for a few years, and I just couldn't do it.
Mm.
And it got more and more obvious to me that my frequency wasn't in alignment with my coworkers, and so I quit. But I didn't know until last year that I had adrenal fatigue.
Oh, yeah.
I felt it, but I didn't know what it was. And then I got this inner guidance saying, you have adrenal fatigue, start eating beef. And
Mm,
I hadn't eaten beef in like over a decade.
yeah.
And my body was like, no, you're gonna have steak. And I'm like, what? What do you mean? And just that level of self-awareness and nourishment
Hmm.
brought me back into health.
Hmm.
But that burnout, when you're fighting your internal battle, because that's what it is, because you're fighting against your soul, it's exhausting.
It is. And we don't listen to the signals. I think over time, we just learn to turn off the notifications of our body, turn
Yep.
off what our bodies are telling us to do, and it'll just get worse and worse, right? It starts off with like a little pain, a little this, a little that, and suddenly um, it's in a really bad place. I remember I was in my mid 30s and my kids were small, and working full time, and I was in grad school, and I went to a hormone doctor. I know, right? Recipe for disaster. And I said, I'm really feeling bad. I'm gaining all this weight. I'm exhausted. I toss and turn at night. I'm not sleeping. I wake up exhausted. So hard to get through the day. And he did blood tests and hormone tests. And he said, do you work third shift? I said, no, I'm a banker. I don't work third shift. And he said, your cortisol levels are that of an ER doctor who works third shift. He said, so basically, all night long, you've got cortisol pumping through your body, which is why you're having a hard time sleeping.
Ah,
And then it crashes and it drops significantly, like bottoms out in the morning when it's time for you to get up, and you basically have nothing to kind of get you going. So then
wow.
it's like crank up the caffeine.
Mhm.
And at the time, I was running a lot. So I was making everything even worse, through
Right.
strenuous exercise.
Mhm.
And I wouldn't have known. I should have known because my body was telling me what everything
Right.
you're doing is not working.
Mhm.
But until I saw these results, I finally knew I need to do something. I need to make some changes because this is not going to work.
Yeah. No, I get that. I remember when I went to see a naturopath and I had been on NuvaRing.
Mm-hmm.
So NuvaRing represses all of your hormones, all of them, not some, all. And so I'm supposed to go through perimenopause, and my OBGYN said, oh, just wear it the whole time. Well, my naturopath did this extensive blood test on me and said, you have no hormones, and that's why you're messed up. And I was like, how is that possible? So I got off it, and I had to, with my partner, he had to wear a condom for a couple months, and he was like, "Rah, rah, rah." I'm like, seriously, like I have no hormones. Like I have to like get my
Yeah.
body balanced. And when they started coming back online, the way it showed up in my cycle, every 6 months it was different.
Yeah.
And it was just my body just trying to come back online into a natural state of being. And I have so much compassion because like we don't really get what we're doing to even some, I was just taking birth control, right? I
Yeah.
had no idea I was
Yeah.
messing up with my body that much.
Hmm.
And
Oh,
so,
even
yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I was going to say birth control is prescribed like candy. I mean, at the youngest of ages, they're giving it to women now,
Yeah.
and for all kinds of things like, oh, you have acne. Oh, it's irregular or whatever. And I think what people don't realize is even with the pill, you don't actually bleed. It's the week that you're not taking it, you're actually just having withdrawal bleed, but you're actually never having your cycle. So there are people that are on that for years and years and years. And then, of course, they get off of it. And then people are having a hard time conceiving. And I'm not a doctor, so I can't tell you why people are struggling with certain things. However, I would say look into that and really become informed about, is
Mm,
this really the best thing for my body? Is it healthy for me to stop all of my hormones?
right.
And what are the implications to me, to my
Right.
body now, later, when I try to conceive or don't try to conceive, what does it do to your bones?
Right.
Later, and there's just a lot of considerations, but I think that we sometimes because it's prescribed by a doctor, we think, oh, it must be safe.
Right? That's a whole other discussion. Yeah, I remember I went to a regular doctor about 5 years ago. That was the last time I saw a regular doctor, and I was 50. And she said, okay, so you're 50, you need another mammogram. And the last time I had one was a nightmare. Um, you need colonoscopy and you need a flu shot. And I'd just been like really tuning into like sovereignty and like helping my body. And I looked at her, I said, well, no, that's a suggestion. And I know my body better than you do. You just met me. I've had this for 50 years. So like I'm tuning into what my body wants. And my body's saying no to all of those, just, muscle testing level. And she was infuriated with me.
Yeah.
Because she's like, well, I'm the doctor. I'm like, honey, I have a PhD. Like, you just study something differently.
Yeah.
Like, that's great. I'm grateful that you did the studies and I'm grateful that you know what you know. I get it. I've been through that program.
Yeah.
And it's like, but you don't know me as well as I do.
Yeah.
And that's true of all of us, is we know ourselves. We don't know we do, but we know ourselves better than anyone else can.
That's so true. It's so true. And if we just stop and we listen and we get still and we get quiet and we start really testing ourselves, muscle testing, tuning in, just noticing, it makes such a huge difference.
Yeah. Because we are everything we need is inside of us if we
Hmm.
choose to tune in.
Yeah. Our human needs to get smaller and allow the spirit to speak a little bit more loudly. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, I had a couple weeks ago, I had a couple people on Instagram reach out to me offering me readings.
Oh, they do that all the time. I think it's
Right?
just all scams.
I was like, oh, honey, I'm sorry, but my soul told me that like if I need to find something out, I have to go within. She's like, no,
Yeah.
no, no, but you have some evil something, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, again, I'm connected with source. I talk to source pretty regularly. That's my term. Source would tell me, like,
Yeah.
hey, by the way, you need to call in Archangel Michael or Saint Germain and clear
Yeah.
this out because like
Yeah.
you just got some shit on you. And she was like, no, 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 but you don't understand. I'm like, no, 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 you don't
You don't.
understand. I love you. I see you. You're a divine being, and you're trying to use me with fear. And
Yeah.
a fear tactic doesn't work for me.
Yeah. 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 I think I probably got the same DM. It's either the same person or some version of it.
Right.
Yeah.
So, do you help people get into that space of tuning in more and more?
Yeah. I would say breath work is such an amazing practice and way to do that with individuals. And so I became a certified somatic trauma informed breathwork facilitator a couple of years ago.
That's beautiful.
And it's so beautiful because you can create these experiences for people based on their intentions and what they need. So I do it coupled, I do it one on one, but I also do it as part of people's coaching program. So I
Oh,
know
awesome.
what's happening, what they need, and then creating these experiences for them. And that has been such a wonderful way for people to really tap in and to release things that don't serve them and to allow the breath to unearth things that maybe they're not even aware of, like subconsciously. And it's just such a beautiful, beautiful modality. And it's free. Your breath is with you at all times. And so learning to be able to do this, but it's such a wonderful gift for me to be able to facilitate these experiences. I love everything about setting the intention. I love about creating the space, internally or online, creating the playlists that I think would be most appropriate, and just really, just holding the space for people to have these experiences. So I think that that is probably one of the best ways to do it. And then I also teach meditation every 6 days a week. So Monday through Saturday, every morning. I started during COVID. And it's a wonderful way to get in community and for all of us to set an intention first thing in the morning, and to really connect to ourselves, connect to our highest selves, connect to one another in this beautiful space and energy together, and breathe and just, be together. It's so beautiful, and we've been doing that since March of 2020.
That's beautiful. I love
Mm.
that. And after I did Body Talk for 8 years, I got a call to go into somatic work, like for myself, and that presence
Mm.
is so incredible. And usually, I'd say like anywhere liver time on the Chinese clock, which is between 1 and 3, I'll get these messages to just be present with
Mm.
whatever is showing up in my body. And I just breathe. I used to try to figure out what it was. And one day, one day I did, and I turned all of my research. So I've been researching since I was 18. So like, that's a lot of research, like 30 something years of me being a researcher. And one day my little 5-year-old came out and said, "Stop, please stop." And I was like, "What?" And she said, "You're turning that on me? You're traumatizing me." And I was like, "Oh, honey, I'm so sorry." Because I was like trying to figure out what it was. And I could find it.
Oh.
I literally like in my heyday, when I was really digging into research, I could literally find anything. This is
Mm.
before Google. This is like I could find things that nobody else could find and send me to the National Archives. I could find it. So like that on a 5-year-old, terrifying. So
Yeah.
she just said, "Please stop." And when I
Mm.
heard that, I was like, "Oh, you just want me to listen. You
Yeah.
don't care if I find out what it is. You just want," and now it's like my body just wants to tell me. I can't even hear anything. It's like if I
Oh.
get a pain in my knee, I'm present with
Hmm.
my knee. And that's
Yeah.
what I love about somatic work.
Yeah. It's you were going back to that heart-centered versus intellectualizing, like trying to understand and figure it out and do something with it. It's like, oh, I'll just be here with you, and I'll just love you through this, and I'll be here as we feel this together and just breathe through it. It's different, feels different, doesn't it?
Very different because
Yeah.
I'm not rushing. I'm not figuring anything out.
Hmm.
I'm just being present, and it's powerful to have that level of patience and
Hmm.
compassion with oneself.
Yeah. Mm. So much
Yeah.
work that we do all the time. Never ends.
Yeah,
Just
I
keep
know.
peeling that onion.
Well, it's funny because the other day when I found this piece of the distorted masculine, I was asking my non-physical team, I'm like, "So what?" And they're like, "Oh no, you did all the hard things. You did the codependency, you did the people pleasing, you did the narcissism, and you did the controlling. You got all of those really big programs out of you.
Yeah,
That took a long time.
yeah,
This is just kind of like an extra thing. You can fix
yeah,
this one. This is like so much easier than all of those." I'm like,
yeah,
"Okay, all right. I don't have to go back to any of those." They're like, "Oh no, you passed those." I'm like,
yeah. Yeah, it's just unlearning, right?
"Yeah."
Practicing something new. I like to say we crowd out the old with new behaviors, right?
Mm.
Just like you can crowd out bad foods on a plate by putting more healthy things on. I think the more practices that we enjoy doing that are nurturing, that are supportive, they're better aligned, you just start to crowd some of the other stuff out. And then it's just like, oh yeah, that's not really a thing anymore. That's the way it's worked for me.
I love that. I love that
Yeah.
mindset because over the past 2 days, I really wanted berries.
Oh, that
And
sounds good.
Oregon's known for berries. So I've had
Yeah.
these massive bowls for breakfast. And I'm noticing that I don't really want anything else during the day because the berries are just so amazing right now.
Mhm.
And so there's no room for anything else.
Yeah, yeah, and that's awesome, right? And then you don't miss the other things.
Mm.
You're just like, "Oh, yeah, I don't really have an appetite for that anymore."
put berries in front of me?
I think I want to go have some after this call. That sounds good.
But you know, it's this really, it's a fascinating, and you know, it's all realms of life. Like it
Yeah.
can be food, it can be what you intake on YouTube or Facebook or
Yeah.
Instagram. It really is a dance of like you get to choose so many layers of where you want to show up. I personally don't want to have things bringing my energy down.
Yeah, absolutely. And even relationships, you can crowd out relationships too. Um,
Oh,
when you,
yeah.
yeah, right? You start to bring in new people in and that are more aligned and that are you're curious about and suddenly if you were in a codependent relationship or something it doesn't feel quite as healthy, you can crowd out some of that a little bit, which
Yeah.
feels less severe than just saying I can no longer talk or see this person.
Mhm. It does feel much softer.
Yeah.
I've been
Yeah.
like, yeah, you're just not in my frequency right now.
Yeah, that doesn't people don't always understand that.
No, I know. I know, I know. I'm so like I'm trying to like bring my language down back to human level.
Yes. Well, isn't it funny you have to know it's like two different dictionaries, vocabularies, right? Depending on the person. Sometimes there's a shortcut with certain people and you're like, "Oh, you understand this, so let's just without having to, oh, how do I say this again?" Like, "Oh, our
Right,
energies don't necessarily align," or,
right,
your mood is not always regulated. Yeah.
right, right. It's funny because like I noticed because my sessions, I channel my sessions. So I come up with language that it's not me, right?
Mhm.
It's just literally what I'm channeling. But then I realize that there is language in there that does not make sense to anyone. Not at all. If I say a complete repair, rehab, reoptimization on an organ, do you have any idea what that means? Probably not. But I just say it, and I'm like, I need to actually record something to explain the terms beforehand. So when you receive the session, you'll know what the hell I'm talking about.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So tell me more about these sessions.
Oh yeah. So as of last month, I don't need a picture. I used to tune into the picture so I could feel the energy, but I worked on a sheep, and she came into my heart before I got a picture. And I did a session on her, and when I got done, my heart felt her heart, and I cried.
Oh, that's so beautiful.
Yeah. So yeah, it's just all energetic. It's all like me tuning in, opening the space for me to tune into the frequency energy of another being, because I feel the
Yeah.
difference between me and them. Not, I mean, you know, the energetic signature, not us and them kind of thing, but it's a different energetic signature. And I'll just tune in and feel the frequency, and I'll feel what's needed in the session, and I write it down and I record it, and I can't read my handwriting, and but then, you
Voice
know,
memo.
with animals, they usually integrate it within like at the longest like a week, and they're done.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's pretty
So
amazing.
beautiful. So
Yeah.
beautiful. What's the different what are some of the differences between like the animal energy and the human?
Um, Animals don't have as much subconscious stuff.
Yeah, that makes
That's
sense.
pretty big, the biggest thing. And they're much more willing to integrate it.
Mm.
We have subconscious programs running all around us.
Oh my gosh, we do, don't we?
Yeah,
And that's
it's
so much of the work is like just
mm,
saying and being willing. Like I think there's a fear sometimes that if we disrupt any of that, that we won't be who we are, right? Like it's like, who do I get to be if I'm no longer all these things? And it's like,
right.
isn't that the question? Who
It's
do you
amazing.
get to be? That's amazing.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
whatever it is just amazing. And like I never like I knew when I was little I was going to be a doctor. I had no idea. Energy healing didn't exist in any sort of my consciousness back when I was a little
Yeah.
kid. But it's exactly what I'm supposed to do.
Hmm.
I just had to go through a circuitous route.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just fun because we get to be whatever we want to be.
Mm.
We just also get the opportunity to unwind all of the subconscious programs that we don't know we have.
That's right. And that's when we get to remember, as you stated before, you get to remember who your pure spirit is
Hmm.
before all the programmings.
Hmm. And that's when it gets to be fun.
Yeah.
Hmm. I'm going to ask the final question because we're at a point where I could go for a longer period of time, but I'm also honoring your time. So that is going to be, how do people find you?
Oh, yeah. I would say you can come straight to my website, anetakuzma.com, ANETAKUZMA.com. And you will find my coaching programs on there. You can find, schedule a free coaching consultation. You can purchase my book, find my podcast, all the things. And then I have all my social channel links there as well. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn and Instagram. And on my podcast, Live the Width of Your Life. But start at the website. I think it'll give you a good flavor for who I am and ways that people can work with me.
Awesome. My sister, I want to thank you so much for sharing
Oh,
time with me, for your wisdom, for your beingness, and for this delightful conversation.
Sophia, it's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much.
You are so very welcome, my dear.